we've already achieved AGI, and so I'm able to do, 10 times more. Trust them more than I trust myself. Almost every disease, maybe 99%, including cancer. We would save about 50,000 lives a year in America, and next year, they will be better than, the best specialist in the world.
You ready?
Yeah.
Perfect. Let's go then. So Derya, you've used GPT-5 Pro to solve a 3-year-old immunology puzzle. How did the model actually help? And did it mostly, organize the existing work and knowledge base, or it actually helped and generated new hypotheses that you hadn't considered before?
Yeah, so this was actually an experiment we had done several years ago where we had some interesting results, but we could not figure out what that really meant. So the way we do experiments is that, we have a hypothesis, we plan the experiment, and then we collect this data. This is on the immune system. It had to do with some immune cell subset and how glucose affects them, whether they can fight against cancer or not. Then we get this data and we try to interpret that data and try to understand the mechanism. In this particular case, we thought that we had a very interesting result, but we couldn't completely explain it, understand what it really meant. And it was just lying there for several years. And when GPT-5 Pro came out, I actually uploaded this result, the data. It's in the format of a figure. And then I explained this was the experiment we did. The experiment actually took 2 weeks. And this is the data we collected. See if you can explain what this means. What's the mechanism? Why we got this result instead of another result? And what should we do next? That sort of a question. And after I think it was 18 minutes, I still remember, it came up with this incredible explanation, which is something that in retrospect I should have thought about, because what it was doing is it was linking another let's say a receptor, another point in this pathway that I sort of knew about, but I couldn't make that connection. And it was taking that piece of information that was already published and then linking it to our data, and seeing that pattern and explaining why we got the result we got. And that to me was really remarkable because, this is something that I've invested several decades of my life in, and I totally missed on that. But the model knew to make those connections, which was really remarkable. And not only that, it also came up with several other hypotheses or suggestions that, well, you should also do this experiment and that experiment. In fact, we had done those experiments. Some of them we have done. I didn't tell the model that. And in fact, we hadn't published those, and they were the right suggestions. So it was saying, if you do this experiment, you should get that, and exactly that's what happened. And then it also had a couple of new suggestions, all of which were things that we also thought about, but hadn't really applied them. So the what was really remarkable is that it wasn't so much as coming up with completely novel idea or hypothesis, really solving what the data meant based on available information. Because biology is so complex, there's so much data out there. Even in our very narrow field, it becomes really impossible to make those connections and really figure things out. Of course, I wish we had access to GPT-5 Pro, 3, 4 years earlier. We would have figured this out in a matter of 18 minutes and then move forward
Sure.
and do the next experiment.
Yeah, so basically, AI helped you organize all of the information that and find those connections that before you kind of found pretty challenging to find, basically,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah,
at some
exactly.
point, it was way faster, and at some point, maybe more uh, organized to find those connections. That's interesting. That's interesting. But the
Yeah.
whole experiment and everything was still done by you and your team, right?
Yeah, so we of course we have to do the physical experiments in the wet lab, but I think what the key point here is that these models, especially since GPT-5 Pro, which is actually much better now with 5.6 Pro, and they're actually coming out with novel ideas as well, is that the AI models now have a very deep understanding of the information. Because in order to make those connections, you have to know a lot of things. And you also have to have, sort of, you have to generalize. That's why I think we've already achieved AGI at certain level, maybe not in every level, because it needs to make a connection that, okay, so that molecule there, although it's something completely different, must be related to this because of that, putting all those connections together and then, making that link, which I think is really remarkable.
So at some point we can say, tell me if I'm right or wrong, with at least with experiments like we're discussing with you right now, we can say that at certain level AGI is reached because AI can you know analyze so much information in so short period of time, in such a short period of time that humans cannot do, right? And it helped you guys. And so at some point, AGI is reached, at least in this kind of in this
Yeah.
field.
Yeah, because people get confused with that. Of course, what's missing in AGI is sort of the self-learning. We humans, we have ability to continuously learn.
Yeah.
The AI models don't have that yet, but at least they have that G, generalization. So it can take a completely different idea or knowledge and then generalize that and link it to something else. So I think, and we do it the same way, but AI is able to do that, a million times faster and it has a million times more access to information.
Talking about AI doing it faster, uh, Derya, do you personally use AI agents right now in your workflows, in your scientific research and in work? And if yes, which parts of the research process have you been able to successfully automate with AI agents?
Yeah, I've been using AI agents since early this year, I guess, when they really became useful, I would say. I'm especially using Codex, which has this, they have a new update called ChatGPT Work, but even before that, they have this thing called computer use. Basically, anything you can do in your computer, you can ask Codex to do it for you. Check my emails and determine if there's something important, write a response, or open this application, very sophisticated data analysis software, and then, go to this folder, open that data file, and then analyze that and write me a report. Something that I would spend hours doing myself. Basically, I'm just telling the agents to do it. Of course, I do a lot of vibe coding as well. If I'm interested in a certain application, I just tell the agents to basically build it for me. And more recently, what is now really amazing is that ChatGPT and Codex has this live voice function. They had voice before, but now it's really like this Jarvis from the science fiction movie. Basically, you just talk to it, and I say, okay, well, good morning. This is what I would like you to do. Go check on that, and we're just talking, and while it's working on it, and I might remember something. Oh, by the way, also do that, and or if it's writing something, oh, I changed my mind. Don't do it that way, and do it this way. Like continuously telling your assistant what to do, and then you're getting a feedback. It's a remarkable experience. It really almost makes work fun. In fact, I suggested to OpenAI people that they should remove the word work and replace it with something more fun, actually, because using that doesn't feel like a work anymore.
You can actually do more work in, and
You can do much more work. In fact, in a paradoxical way, I'm actually more busy now than I've ever been, even though I'm able to do 10 times more. Because you can really move forward. You don't get stuck. The most frustrating thing is exactly like the example I gave earlier. You do this experiment and you can't figure it out. It gets stuck, and then you get frustrated and you leave it, and then you move on to something else. With AI now, especially with the agents, if you get stuck on anything, you just tell it to solve it for you. Just an extremely small example. I had this portable SSD that I wanted to use and connected to my Mac, and it wouldn't work. Normally I would try to figure out, do I need to, format it? What do I need to do? Go to Google, try to figure that out. I just talked to Codex and said, I have this SSD connected. Go figure out why it's not working. And then in seconds, it said, well, you need to format it in this way, and so that they can write Mac. I said, okay, do it. And then
yeah.
in few seconds, it formatted and it worked. It
And
gives
you
you
just do
such an
what's fun.
empowerment.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Um, getting back to uh, uh, biology and all of that. When working with AI on solving biological problems, where do you see AI stop being useful, and where only the human judgment uh, is essential and becomes essential and is mostly important, I would say, like that.
I think we're at a point where AI is able to come up with better hypotheses. AI is able to design better experiments. AI is able to do data analysis better than we do, faster. And AI is able to write the results and papers. So, many of the functions that we as a scientist had could be basically done by the AI or AI agents. But what is critical, to answer your question directly, is that now our role is even more important because we have so many options to choose from. For example, before I would come up with a couple of great hypotheses, and I only would have two, three to choose from. But now AI actually comes up with 50 great hypotheses. So that makes it a little bit more difficult. Like they're all good, but which one I need to focus? Which one I should spend the effort to do the experiments and such. So that judgment part becomes much more important. And so, and in that regard, also expertise become very important, actually. Having expertise to be able to judge, is that the direction we should go? They're all good choices, but one is a better choice. And if I have to spend my resources, that's the direction I should go. And, again, it comes up with, okay, you can do these experiments, it gives me 10 choices. They're all great experiments. Again, I have to choose, okay, my end goal is I need to treat this disease. I have to find treatment, and the best way, even though the other experiments are interesting, maybe I need to go to this direction. And in sometimes it's a matter of taste, right? So kind of like you feel intuitively this is a better thing to do. AI cannot really make that judgment. So we're in the role of a judge, a director, a kind of a high level manager, just like a CEO would do in a company, right? Tells at a high level, this is what you guys need to do, and this is what. So I have now, agents working for me, and all I have to do is tell them what to do. But that doesn't actually reduce our workload. It actually increases it because now you can do 10 times more.
Exactly, yeah.
So
So,
I think that's where the science is going as well.
so your work comes up when you actually need to judge the hypothesis and all of the information that AI has given you, basically.
Yes,
Interesting.
yes,
Interesting.
and that takes quite a bit of effort,
Oh,
because
100%, of
again,
course.
they're all good. It's not like you can filter out, oh, this is bad, and then you have to see the subtle differences, which is better than the good ones.
How often have you, or how often have you experienced AI coming up with, um, conclusions and insights, and that without properly surfacing maybe the internet and looking for truth? So how often did you experience AI basically coming to you with false information? And if it did, I think for you it's crucial because you're working on actual, really important medical biological problems.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think you're asking about the hallucinations, which were a problem back in the days of GPT, GPT-4, 4.0, which continued until I would say, for the ChatGPT part until maybe oh 03 model, which still had some hallucinations, although it got reduced. But I feel that, since GPT-5, especially the latest models, if you use the Pro model, I don't notice any hallucination whatsoever. I'm right now at a point where I trust more to in medical or scientific questions more to AI model. Of course, the latest frontier models, like you have to have the thinking in the extra high or the pro models because that makes a huge difference. You have to have a very high reasoning model. If you're just using the instant model, GPT-5 point 6 even, you might not get a 100% perfect answer. But now I'm at a point where with these top models, I trust them more than I trust myself. Even including in my own field where I spent 35 years studying, there's some incredible details that I may not have remembered, or and then I ask the pro model, it comes up with something that wow, I said, that's great. The same thing with medical issues. I don't see patients right now, but I work with some of my friends, MDs, and we test sort of live cases, sort of in dermatology, just looking at the photo of the lesion. The latest models are able to almost 100% able to diagnose what that is. And so I think that problem has been solved. Um, Especially because the models have become extremely large now. They have trillions of parameters, and also they have real-time access to the web. So, if and all the information we know as truth is what's published, right? So we cannot imagine things. So if they have that and if they can reason well, then there's no reason to hallucinate. The only issues sometimes that could happen is if you push for it something that's uh, almost like push it to hallucinate, right?
Okay, yeah, that's great. And it's great that this solved because this is really crucial. So Daria, COVID hit us hard, uh, 6 years ago. Um, so how do you see AI changing our ability to respond to future epidemics?
I think it's going to be critical. If we had the current AI models, we would have, although, the response to pandemic in terms of vaccines and, partially treatments was relatively fast. These things take years, but, in a matter of months, we were able to do all certain things. But with AI, if you had AI models, it would have been a matter of days. So we probably would have made the vaccine much, much earlier. We would have had treatments much, much quicker. But more importantly, I think our response to the pandemic would have been much better because if you remember, I lived through it. Since I work in the field, we even did some research and so on. It was very chaotic because people didn't really understand the whether the virus was how much infectious it was, whether the mask would prevent it, and the effectiveness of the vaccines, and the whole dynamics of the viral spread, which is something you have to constantly do simulations, and it is very complex, but you can actually simulate it if you had all the information. And I believe AI models now have that capability to really simulate a virus with these kind of abilities or features, how fast it's going to go through certain populations, how quickly the vaccines will prevent it, and if you wear a mask or if you don't, what the effect is going to be. I mean, all of these things you have to simulate in real time because by the time you get the information, it's already too late, right? So months pass and people die. People get really upset because they were not allowed to go to their work, but it turns out that maybe it wasn't that dangerous. They could have, they were told to wear masks, but then if they didn't wear a mask, it wasn't that bad. You see what I mean? Like there was so much complexities, and I think all of those things could have been simulated, and we would have much more as if the pandemic happened before. Imagine right now, if the same COVID happens again, our response would be very different, very, very much, much better. So AI actually would enable us to do that.
That's amazing. Because at the very end, we are developing AI for, to increase longevity, to make our lives better. I'm personally even more interested in AI really making on that level rather than coding and everything, to be honest, right? Coding is
Yeah,
cool, right? It brings revenues to the
right.
companies so that they can fund, maybe AI research in biology and longevity and everything. So it's all kind of interconnected, but at the very end, I guess that's where everyone hopes it will really help a lot.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and it will. That's obviously my focus as well. And I've made these claims before. Last year I said within a decade there won't be any disease that's not treatable. Whether or not that will diffuse to population is a different question, but I think we will have clear treatments for almost every disease, maybe 99%, including cancer. And then not only that, after maybe within 15 years or so we will be able to reverse the aging process. And because the AI is going to be able to, again, very similar to the pandemic situation, we'll be able to simulate the biology. We'll create the digital twins, and so we'll be able to do clinical trials using AI. That instead of taking years, it will be a matter of days or weeks. So the drug discovery is accelerating like crazy, and I think AI will have the greatest impact on health and well-being of humans, definitely.
Amazing. So Daria, recently Unit 3 Robotics, humanoid robots performed a live surgery for the first time. So how close do you think we are to AI-powered robotics, first of all, bringing surgery to masses, um, and how close we are to this robotics companies meaningfully changing surgical practice, and when we reach that, what barriers what
Hmm.
barriers do you see in reaching that, uh,
Yeah.
reaching robotics in surgery?
Yeah, so I think for that we still have some time to go. Although some of the demos are very impressive. The problem with the robotics is that something that we as humans don't appreciate, the physical intelligence or intelligence to use our hands is much, much more difficult to train AI than say solving the biggest math problem or the stuff that I already mentioned that are at the cognitive level. In fact, our brain evolved to survive in a physical world. We already are born with that pre-trained model of the world model. In fact, animals have that physical intelligence as well. So things that we take it for granted, just going cooking and folding dresses and things like that are trivial for any human being, but they are extraordinarily difficult for robots. The same issue with the self-driving cars, right? So it's been so many years. Like Elon Musk is training their models, and still we don't. I mean, they've come a long way, but they're not at a perfect level such that we could rely on them. So I think we will eventually have robots doing surgeries better than humans. There's absolutely no question about that. But my prediction is that it probably needs another at least 4 or 5 years. To come to that level. Because again, you have so many edge cases. In fact, it might take even longer than 5 years because with things that involve human life or human health, like self-driving cars, and it's not okay to have 99% good, right? So, like if I'm asking for to analyze my data, and if the model is 99% good, that's great for me. But in a surgery, you want to have a robot that you can 100% trust. Of course, even humans can make mistakes, but for robots, it has to be even much higher level. And because of this incredible edge cases in the physical world, the robots have to have, or the AI has to have a complete world model where they have the same kind of mental, how to say, a level of surviving in a 3D world, and what does it mean to have hands, and what does it mean to manipulate things, from a very first principles perspective. So I think that's going to take a little bit of time. But having said that, for robots will be walking around us, for tasks that are not very dangerous or dangerous to humans. They will easily take over. I mean, they're already starting to do that, working in factories and carrying boxes and or maybe at home they'll be able to fold your clothes or bring you your tea and things like that. Just like we have robots that can clean the house, we'll have much better versions of it. For really manipulative things because we really need to solve the hand as well. Human hand is unbelievable. In fact, Elon Musk always talks about that. We have something like 26 freedom of action in our hand. And it's really perfectly built to do fine work. It's the most remarkable part of your body. People don't appreciate this. In fact, in the brain, the highest area represents the hand. Actually, you have this homunculus. We devote so much our intelligence to manipulate it. So that both at the hardware level, you got to have the right actuators, to have this, 20 plus freedoms, and be able to constantly manipulate all that fine movements and so on and so forth. So it will take time, but what's 5 years, right? So even if
Yeah.
it takes 10 years, you'll come to a point where uh, people will trust robot surgeons much more than human surgeons. This will absolutely will happen, and in fact, soon people will trust driverless cars, self-driving cars more than those that are driven by a human being. I recently rode a Tesla, and I went from San Francisco to San Diego without touching the wheel, and it was the most incredible experience I had. I trust that more than I trust myself because I get distracted and I do all kinds of things, and so that day will come, whether in 5 years, whether in 10 years, or it could be earlier if there was some sort of a huge breakthrough in the robotics. And then that will be incredible because imagine this. You are living in a remote region where there are no surgeons, right? So if you have some emergency, somebody has to take you to nearest hospital, which is like 100 kilometers away or miles away. You'll die by the time you get there. You'll have a robot surgeon waiting for you, even in a village, because they will not cost anything,
Definitely.
right? And they will interfere immediately, or in a case of war or something, where human surgeons cannot go to certain areas, robots will be there to take care of you. For the elderly, if there's some emergency. You'll even have like small robot clinics where they will prepare the surgical clinic for you right there. You don't even need a hospital. And so yeah, it sounds like a huge science fiction, but we'll get there.
To me, it sounds very realistic, to be honest. And I'm waiting for that. And talking about the cars and the experience of driving a self-driving car, I'm waiting for a moment where I look around and I understand that all of the cars around me are driverless because this is so
Yes.
much more safe for
Yeah.
myself. So, be-
There would be zero accident. We would save about 50,000 lives a year in America alone in 2 million accidents that happen. I'm absolutely sure, after having that experience, the only danger right now is from other humans driving cars.
exactly.
The self-driving AI is just incredible right now.
Um, Getting back to medicine, Daria, what do you think are the most promising areas in medicine right now are for AI-driven startups?
Um, I mean, these things change nowadays on a monthly basis with every new
Yeah,
advance. But right now, I think there are low-hanging fruits. Basically, doing diagnosis, and actually even writing the prescriptions for almost all diseases. It can be done with AI, at least as sort of an assistant of a doctor, right? You can basically give all the information. The things that AI cannot do yet are like the physical exam, or sort of the human touch part, or taking care of the patient in the hospital. Of course, nurses are more valuable now, But anything in between, from precise diagnosis to treatment to monitoring the patients, and taking action, or notifying immediately that things are you're in a hospital bed, and you have a bunch of machines connected to you. AI can see certain patterns before things go wrong, and so it could actually notify, okay, well, I see that this patient is going to go downhill in the next 10 minutes, so interfere now. And those kind of things. And I think for many of the healthcare issues, patients don't even have to go and see the doctor. Like the majority of healthcare problems can be diagnosed, uh, through a video, or through asking their symptoms. There are cases where you have to go and do all kinds of lab analysis, imaging, and but as soon as you have that data, you can upload it to AI, and it will give you a very, very, I think, I would say in better than most doctors would. And this is going to keep getting better. I mean, I've been saying this for almost 2 years, that AI doctors are going to arrive, and I think they are at the stage where you can really trust them. And next year, they will be better than the best specialist in the world. So
Thank you, Derya. Now, as we're running short on time, I'll ask quick questions. You can reply just yes or no. If you want, you can reply longer. Uh, but if you're okay, you can just say yes or no. It's called blitz. You're okay with that?
okay, yeah.
Um, for serious biomedical research, do you see more value in closed frontier models or in open source ones?
Both. Should I explain that, or just? I,
If
I
you
I
want
think
to.
both have a place. Yeah, closed models are because they are more advanced. Usually, they're frontier. Open source ones are for local analysis. For privacy purposes. Some of them, they can be fine-tuned very, very for specific problems. So I believe they both have value.
Has AI made your work-life balance better or worse?
Better.
Will AI mostly replace routine diagnostics?
Yes.
That's um, will AI replace most wet lab work or just make it way more efficient?
Yes, with robotic automation.
Will AI find the cure for cancer?
Yes, with validation by humans.
And the last one, um, codex, Claude Code, or maybe anything else for scientific research and reasoning.
Codex.
Thank you, Derya. I appreciate your time,
Thank
and I
you.
appreciate your huge contribution to science and to humanity.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.